Welcome back to our discussion, Delivering a World-Class Call Center Experience in Government, sponsored by Zendesk here on Federal News Network. My guest today is Matt Hale, Solutions Consultant for the Public Sector at Zendesk, and I'm Tom Temin. And before the break, I said we would get into this idea of omnichannel. And Matt, if you would maybe explain what omnichannel is in the CX context and how you can make it work for your agency as an omni-channel experience to improve and drive CX.
Sure. So the idea of omni-channel, a lot of times the lesser discussed multi-channel nowadays as well, they're all in this world of how can we make it so that a customer or constituent that's reaching out for help can do that in any way that they want to, and that we can support them the same way. So omni-channel is really about offering any possible modern method of a constituent reaching out, and then being able to centralize that enough on the back end so that there's no discrepancies between somebody calling in versus emailing in. In terms of how to get there, I think the main thing that you need to do to create an omni-channel environment is to work to centralize things behind the scenes. It's really easy to do multi-channel nowadays, which would be just spinning up all sorts of different ways for people to get in touch with you. You got phone numbers over here, you got email addresses over here, a web form on a site, maybe a live chat widget popping up somewhere, maybe allow social media interactions. But if things aren't centralized behind the scenes, then while you're making it easier for your constituents to get in touch, you're really making things that much harder for your agents to be able to actually support them. If I've got to jump between 5 different windows and interfaces, and I have siloed data, I can't track things properly from that phone call to that email, or I can't even handle them the same way from that web form to that social media request, you're not really doing yourself any favors. So omnichannel would be everything's coming into one place, but then I've got that one singular interface, that one singular data source to be able to follow back up with them. That's really the goal behind that.
So in other words, you have to be able to resolve the situation however the customer chooses, and hopefully at the easiest and quickest level. But in the back end, you almost need a case management approach, such that if they end up calling, they don't have to start explaining from the very beginning what's going on. The transaction record and the meaning of it will be available to that call center person already, because that's a big, I think, bugaboo for people, and we know in our private life, got to start all over with all the details in the background.
Yeah,
when you get
you're hitting it on the head. Yeah, that's omni-channel right there. You think about your personal life. How many times potentially over the course of an interaction even or request that you have in your personal life, you might switch channels. Maybe you reach out to a company while you're at work one day by filling out a web form, and then they email you back and you respond via email. But then you hop in the car and you want to know what the status of this request is. So now you call them, and then they send you a text back, and now you're texting back. If you're re-explaining or re-authenticating yourself even every single time you're doing one of those steps, immense frustration. You're eliminating your ability to do that first contact resolution that we just talked about. You're destroying your efficacy with that customer effort score that we talked about before the break, making things harder on the customer or the constituent to be able to do business with you. So omnichannel would be exactly, no matter how I reach out to you, every time I've switched channels, or just wherever, I like to think of it as wherever I am in the moment, whatever way that I might want to reach out for help on the platform, the channel of my choice, have a way to be able to do that. And that's how you're promoting that idea of customer effort score. That's how you're making things easier for your constituents by wherever they think to go first. There you are, and you're able to support them just as effectively as any other method.
And what about the idea of voice recognition and other easy, automated almost to the caller or to the user authentication means? Does that creep people out, that if you just say hello, they know who it is? Or is that something that you find is coming into these systems as a way to speed up things?
I don't think it creeps people out. I think we're maybe it did in the past, but I think we're at this point in society. There's so much AI everywhere that people are interacting with chat bots and voice based bots so much that yeah, I think we're past the point that you could say somebody's going to be unnerved or even upset by you recognizing who they are. I think it's more expected than anything else, especially since the start of the pandemic and some of the biggest things that we've seen in terms of customer expectation in general, and this is industry agnostic, is increased expectation around response time and accessibility. And both of those two things really require you to be able to leverage concepts like automation where it can be effective. I think it makes a lot more sense for me to pick up a phone call when somebody has reached out to me, and me, instead of saying, hi, who is this? Okay, let me look up your record. Let me create a ticket for you. What is this about? Oh, I'm not the right person to talk to. Let me transfer you to them. To instead be able to leverage these technologies to have those first few seconds of that phone call be, hey, Tom, it's nice to talk to you. I assume you're calling about this issue that I see in my system from 2 days ago. Let me tell you the status of that. That's how you're able to leverage that technology and that voice recognition to be able to drive a superior customer experience, right out of the get-go. That's always going to be my best practice. If you've got those tools available, use them to your benefit.
And I wanted to ask you something of an irony here because our main topic is having a great call center and call center experience. But one of the ways to do that is to minimize the situations that actually reach the call center and to
Sure.
try to resolve them in a chat box or online. And so that's considered state of the art now, right? Is to actually reduce the need for calls so that you can have better calls when they are absolutely needed.
Right. Yes, I think we're always going to have calls, at least for the foreseeable future. There's always going to be people that prefer to call. I'm secretly one of those people that prefers to call. If I've got an issue, I don't want to deal with a chat bot. I want to talk to somebody on the phone. I still have that feeling of, with all of my technology, all of my helping to sell and create solutions around these technologies, I'm still old school enough that I just want to talk to somebody on the phone. So there's always going to be those people. But you're right. The thing about phone calls is that they're traditionally the most siloed channel. Telephony is its kind of own beast, and a lot of the times, it's also the most expensive channel. It's also the most time-consuming channel. I could be chatting with 3 or 4 people in the same span of time as it takes me to, resolve one phone call and be on the phone with somebody. So the idea of a call center, I think nowadays, maybe the modern call center, it's more than just calls. It is all these other methods. And you're right that I think a big push that we see in this world of modern CX is what kind of methods can we employ, especially in the omni-channel world, to get away from phone calls, to reduce the burden so that when we do have something that has to be a phone call or somebody that prefers a phone call, we've got the time to be able to devote to them and make that a resolution. The best ways that I think of to really consider moving people away from phone is go right back to that idea of CES and customer effort. Make these other channels easier, and that's what people are going to prefer. So that's where you see the big buzz right now in the industry with bots and artificial intelligence. Can we at least do data collection or basic troubleshooting with automation and with self-service so that we can get people to the right spot if they do need a call, or maybe deflect some of those maybe more mundane or low touch type of issues so that we can free up our human agents and our human resources for those things that are always going to need that little bit of human touch. I don't think it's wrong to push people to those things. I think it's just, let's make sure that we're doing it right. And the way that we're doing it right is to make it complete and make it as easy as
Sure.
possible for the constituent. And then there you go.
And in the few minutes we have left, really about a minute left, I wanted to ask you about the idea of cloud hosted solutions for all of this omni-channel work. Can they
Sure.
also enable remote and telework call center employees, which seems to be a way a lot of companies are going? And I think the government, certainly the employees, would like to have that option also.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a huge proponent. I think we especially saw the necessity for it at the start of the pandemic. Everybody had to be able to move to a remote call center, let's say. I have worked personally with many customers in every sector of government as well as the private sector to move their call centers, in some cases, literally overnight to full-time remote work, so that they could be able to support that. I think as long as you're giving people the right technology and giving them the tools that they need to be successful at their jobs, to be fulfilled, you don't need to be looking over their shoulder all the time. Even some of the current move back to the office concepts doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I think we've proven over the last couple of years that these types of jobs can be done remote, and a lot of times to the benefit of the people doing them, they can be done just as well remotely. So all of that data, everything that we've discussed up until this point, if you've got a system where that kind of information is going to be available to you, honestly, I think that you've got what you need in order to be able to effectively support a remote workforce and see a lot of success with that.
All right, some great information. We've been speaking with Matt Hale, solutions consultant for the public sector at Zendesk. I'm Tom Temin. You've been listening to Federal News Network. For more on this discussion, please visit federalnewsnetwork.com and search Zendesk.